adapting your texting style to her personality type. If you want to be successful at attracting all types of women via text, then you need to be able to adapt your texting style to get along with her on her level while still being yourself. If you only use one style of texting and aren't willing to adapt to the specific woman you're texting, then you will experience disconnects with a lot of women who could have really liked you. Additionally, if a guy doesn't adapt, a woman will usually judge him as being unattractive, as lacking the social intelligence to adapt and get along with different types of people, or will assume that they just aren't good for each other. If you don't want to be able to attract all kinds of women, then you don't need to adapt and can simply lose the opportunities with women who would have liked you and who you may really have liked or loved as well. For example, sometimes a woman will be a little feisty or challenging initially, but open up and show her sweet, loving and warm side when in a relationship. In most cases, the more physically attractive a woman is, the more she is like that initially. If a guy can't handle her behavior initially, he won't get to experience a relationship with her. For example, sometimes a guy will be texting a pretty woman and she'll be a little bit feisty or challenging initially. He might then begin to feel insecure, unworthy, or uncomfortable with how to handle the text conversation. Now, it doesn't mean that she doesn't have a soft, sweet, warm, loving side to her. She is simply being that way via text because that may be the way she likes to text, or it could be her trying to actively screen out guys who can't handle a woman being a little bit feisty or challenging. Guys who need a woman to be reassuring all the time. Alright, so she is being that way to hopefully find a guy that will make her feel attracted in person, right? A guy who can handle himself around a pretty woman and not need to be reassured all the time, and so on. So if a guy is interacting with a woman like that and she's being a bit feisty or challenging, and he then doesn't step up and be a little bit playfully challenging as well, then she'll start to feel a little bit of a disconnect, right? She'll start to feel like, okay, maybe this guy's a little bit too boring for me, and so on. As I said though, you don't have to try to attract all types of women via text, but it's important to understand that just because a woman is texting in a bit of a feisty way or a challenging way, or isn't investing a lot in the conversation initially, it doesn't mean that she's not a nice girl. It doesn't mean that she won't love you completely in a relationship. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have a soft, loving, warm, friendly, down-to-earth, easygoing side to her. Now, when adapting your texting style, you need to understand that each woman has a different level of confidence in her attractiveness, which then will affect how she behaves. For example, if a woman is insecure, she may not want to show too much interest in case you reject her. This often applies to women that you look at as being very pretty. She doesn't believe in herself as much as you think she does. She is insecure. She is afraid of putting herself out there and getting rejected. So she holds her cards close to her chest for a while. On the other hand, if a woman is confident, she may not want to show too much interest because she wants to see if you can retain your confidence regardless of how she behaves. Most guys give up with that kind of reaction from a woman because they lack the social intelligence to understand why women behave in the ways that they do. The guy who attracts her and hooks up with her is a guy who doesn't need her to reassure him that she likes him each step of the way. She is texting him, therefore she likes him. She matched with him, therefore his photos passed her initial assessment of attractiveness and she is open to texting and then meeting up. He doesn't need anything else from her. In another example, if a woman is very shy and sees you as higher value than her or out of her league, you need to be willing to compliment her and make her feel good about herself while also continuing to be the cool, confident guy that she can look up to and respect. In other words, you don't suck up to her, you don't grovel, you don't put her on a pedestal and make her feel like you're lucky to be texting with her, and so on. In another example, if she is a woman who needs a guy who is more confident than her, then don't be less confident than her and hope she likes you anyway. You have to be willing to make her feel the kind of attraction she wants by daring to be confident and even bold at times. Otherwise, it won't feel fair to her to date you because she wouldn't be getting the attraction experience she really wants. So knowing those things about women and how they text is making you more socially intelligent right now. If you have ever noticed other guys getting texts and talking about it with their guy friends, they'll be looking at a text and saying, I sent this and she sent that. Like, why is she being like that? Like, why did she text me that? Or why didn't she reply for 2 days? And so on. It's because there are different types of women with different types of levels of confidence. And as a result, they don't all behave in the same way. For example, a guy could send a series of texts to a woman and get her out on a date, and then send the same series of texts, or pretty much, to another woman, and she won't be responding that well. There can be many reasons for it. So what you need to do as a socially intelligent man when texting a woman you like is be aware that she could be feeling insecure and therefore playing a little bit hard to get and so on, or she could be very confident and need you to be more confident than her, so she's playing a little bit hard to get to see if you're going to maintain your confidence. If you sense that she's insecure and shy, then you do still need to be attractive and be confident and so on via text, but you should also be a bit more charming and make her feel good about herself, versus if you're talking to a woman who is very confident and wants a guy who is more confident than her, then you need to have the courage to be a little bit daring at times and text things that shy girls or insecure girls couldn't handle, but very confident girls really like. Now, in terms of adapting to her texting style while still being yourself. So, with the example of being a bit more daring via text with a more challenging woman or a very confident woman who can handle it, it doesn't mean that a guy is not being himself. For example, sometimes a guy will be very professional and well-mannered throughout most of the day because he works in the corporate world, for example. Then when he meets up with a friend, he might be very friendly and easygoing and just hang out and have a chat. Then when he meets up with his parents, for example, he might be serious, friendly, easygoing, and so on. Yet there are going to be times when he's hanging out with a friend, or when he's hanging out with his family, his parents, and so on, that he says something a little bit more cheeky or daring or bold. Likewise, when he's in a relationship with a woman, he might occasionally say something very cheeky, daring, bold. He might take a risk to say something that he normally wouldn't say around other people because he's comfortable around her. He's letting that side of himself come through. Right? So when I say adapt to a woman's texting style while still being yourself, if, for example, a guy isn't normally very daring or challenging or bold or doesn't say something cheeky very often, but he does say it sometimes, then by being a bit more daring, he's not being someone that he's not. Instead, he's being someone that he's not very often. It's still part of his personality. It's still there within him. And what he's doing as a socially intelligent man is letting that come to the surface and using it in certain moments when interacting with particular women to be effective, to be attractive, and get the result that he wants. Now, in terms of adapting your texting style, you also need to understand that each woman will have slightly different values. Some women are very family oriented and only want to find a guy who will fit in to her family and be respected by them. Some women don't care about what their family think and are more of a rebel or free spirit. Some women don't want to settle down right now and just want to have fun, whereas others are looking for a serious relationship. You may not know what type of woman she is right away, of course, if you've matched with her on a dating app and begin texting, but you need to pick up on it as you text and then adjust accordingly. This not only applies to texting, but also in everyday life. One of the most important traits that make other people see you as a cool guy is that you're able to get along with them on their level while still being yourself. A guy who isn't cool, or in other words, a guy who lacks the social intelligence to adapt and get along with people on their level, will go silent or seem uncomfortable when people of different energy or interaction styles enter a group. He will struggle to contribute to the conversation and will seem out of sync. The reality of life is that it's fun to occasionally vibe along with other people's energy rather than just being rigid and only sticking to a particular style of interacting. For example, only being serious, only being well-mannered. Vibing along with other people's energy is not faking a personality. Instead, it's either expanding who you are or bringing out a certain side of yourself to enjoy moments with people and experience a more amusing and interesting life. It's more interesting and amusing to live your life and be able to get along with all kinds of people rather than only with a certain kind of person. You don't have to keep all of those people in your life, but being able to get along with them in the moment is what makes people see you as a cool guy versus an awkward guy. In terms of dating, it's only really necessary to do that when you are single and trying to meet women. Being able to get along with different kinds of women and vibe with their energy results in you easily sleeping with all kinds of women. In most cases, her friends will like you and encourage her to be with you. When you're in a committed relationship and have settled down, both you and your woman will gradually feel less inclined to want to get along with random strangers. Most couples tend to want to maintain friendships with other couples. If you get married, it usually changes again. Most couples then only want to associate with other married couples. The entire time though, it's still much better to be able to get along with all kinds of people and vibe with their energy while still being yourself. In terms of your working life, it helps you at work because you are seen as someone who can get along with everyone, which then results in promotions. In everyday life, it's useful when interacting with workers in retail situations, for example, so they treat you better. It's also useful when interacting with friends of friends or other random people who you have to have an in-person interaction with for some reason. So here's an example. A pretty woman that you like texts and behaves in a hip-hop kind of way or occasionally pretends to be gangster just for fun. She may not be your ideal type of woman, but you can still get along with her, attract her, and hook up with her. She texts, "Sup, homie?" And he replies, "Yo, what's good, Jenny? Chillin', you?" "Well, I was chillin', now you got me thinking about you. Got you struck." "Would be more struck if you came over. I got booze, let's have a drink." "Maybe." "Girl, get your ass over here." "LOL, you're bad." "I'm a sweet, nice guy. See, I even got some flowers for you." "LOL, so nice of you, thanks." "What time?" "When you finish getting ready. Let's get our party on, girl." "Okay, see you in about 2 hours." So imagine in that case, he liked the girl, he found her attractive, and she sent something like, "Sup, homie," to him, and he replied with, "Oh, hi, how are you?" and had a neutral type of conversation. He only sticks to one style of texting. He isn't willing to playfully adapt to her style of texting and just have some fun with it in the moment so she feels that connection. Right? A guy who's able to do that is socially intelligent and is seen as cool by other people. By the way, in that particular example, I used incorrect grammar on purpose. I said, "I got booze," rather than "I've got booze." It's just part of talking in that particular way for the fun of it. Another example is a guy is texting a woman who is more of a party girl, but he just wants a girlfriend, which is fine, of course, but if he wants to be able to connect with her, he needs to understand where she's at this particular point in her life. She doesn't want a guy who wants her to immediately stop being interested in partying and be a stay-at-home girlfriend. It doesn't mean that she won't become that if she falls in love with him, but at this point in her life, the way that she's feeling is that she's interested in partying. So while texting with her, the guy then begins to end the text conversation by saying, "Hey, so I'm catching up with a friend tonight, so I have to go now, but what are you doing Friday night?" The girl says, "Going out to party. We'll be at Icon Club with friends. Probably end up getting very drunk. You want to come?" "I don't usually go to clubs these days. Not really into it. Maybe I can see you on Sunday for a coffee?" Maybe. She may then get the sense that he's not going to want her to party at all and isn't willing to respect and enjoy what she likes in life at the moment. The reality is that she will not want to continue partying for life after she falls in love with him. As a personal example, when I met my woman, she was 20 and I was 35. She was in her prime. She enjoyed dancing, having drinks, and hanging out with her single female friends. When we got together, I remained open to going out to party with her, and it was actually a great time in my life and hers. After 3 months of partying on weekends, she eventually said that she was bored of it and just wanted to do things with me on the weekends, for example, road trips, go to sports games, find cool places to eat or chill out, and so on. As a result, she didn't have any resentment towards me for stopping her from partying. If I had tried to pull her away from partying immediately, it would be something that she'd be annoyed about to this day. On the surface, it may seem that you can't get a woman like that to settle down because she's in her prime, she's the most beautiful that she will be physically to most males at that point in her life. She's also hanging out with female friends who like to go out partying. Yet she has turned out to be a completely loyal, supportive, loving woman who I've been with for nearly 10 years now. Prior to that, I had multiple women in my life pretty much all the time. In fact, when I met her, I had 4 other women in my life, meaning that I was sleeping with 4 other women on rotation. They would come over to my place, we'd go out to the movies, we'd go to restaurants and so forth, go to a sports game, whatever it may be, but I had them on rotation. I had girlfriends, but I never wanted to settle down until I met this particular woman. And As I said, on the surface, it may seem like a woman like that isn't someone that could turn into a completely loyal, loving, supportive woman. She would want to go out partying and so forth, but that was only a particular point in her life. So in terms of the example of the guy texting the girl who is currently interested in partying, if he's not able to adapt to that with her and seems to be coming across as the sort of guy who only wants to immediately domesticate her, then her guard is going to go up. It's much more socially intelligent and effective to be able to get along with her at that point in her life and enjoy it with her, have her fall in love with you, and then she wants to just be with you. Yet trying to force her away from that or guilt trip her into feeling like she shouldn't be going out and partying, she should just be having nice, pleasant dates with a guy, isn't going to work in most cases. The woman will feel like he's trying to take her away from something and most likely will then resent him in months or years to come. So with adapting to particular women, if you want to be successful at attracting a particular beautiful woman that you meet, you need to be able to adapt to her and understand where she is at in life rather than expecting her to check all of your boxes immediately and without exception. For example, a guy might want a woman to be into the same things as him or to at least respect and appreciate what he's into. Yet when he meets her, she's not into those things, or she doesn't really want to hear about it when he starts talking about it. However, when she falls in love with him and begins to devote herself to him, she will most likely be into those sort of things as well, or respect and appreciate it and support it and so on. Likewise, a woman might have been hanging out with a certain type of crowd and behave in a particular way that he doesn't like, but he likes the rest of her. Everything else about her is great, but just one part of her, the way that she does this or that in her behavior or how she looks at things in life, isn't exactly what he would like it to be. That can change, right? She can fall in love with him and have her eyes open to other ways of looking at things or behaving or being. She's not potentially always going to be like that. So that's important to keep in mind when texting women that you find attractive. They may not always come across exactly how you would like them to be, but when you make a woman fall in love with you and she devotes herself to you, she will usually then try to adapt and mold herself to be more attractive and impressive to you. She will want to maintain your interest. When adapting your texting style, also understand that each woman will behave differently depending on what time of month it is. The changes in a woman's hormones throughout the month do affect her mood, what kind of things she feels up for, how she feels about herself, and so on. So you can't expect her to respond in the same way every day or to like texting in a certain way all throughout the month. Now, that time of the month for a woman is often seen in a funny way and so forth, but it is real. There are real hormonal changes that happen in a woman's brain, in her body, that cause her to behave and feel differently. So she won't always be in the same type of mood. Whereas for us men, our hormones are consistent throughout the month and we're able to be that consistent man. But women, they feel differently at different points in the month, right? So if she responds well at a certain time of month when you're using a particular type of texting, and then she doesn't respond well when you're using the same type of texting, it can sometimes mean that she's just a bit down, she's a bit irritable because it's nearly that time of month or it is that time of month for her. When adapting your texting style, also understand that each woman will have a different amount of time available for text conversations. Some women only want to use text to arrange meetups. Others have plenty of time to chat, but still want you to arrange meetups. Some women don't want to waste time on a texting relationship that could go nowhere. Some women may only be able to reply every few days because they simply don't prioritize guys who are an option via text, compared to a lover or a boyfriend. When adapting your texting style, also understand that each woman will react to the same kind of humor in different ways, depending on her level of confidence, the history between you and her interest level in you, and her current mood or energy level. Each woman will also prefer using a different tone via text. For example, some women like to text in a cute and sweet way. Others like to be friendly but not sweet. Others like to be feisty and challenging. If a guy is texting a feisty and challenging girl and he's too nice, polite, or predictable in his texting style, she may assume that he'd be boring in person and in a relationship, and therefore she will lose interest. Some women like to use a bad girl type of approach where she uses swearing or curse words, she is sexual, she is seemingly rude, and so on. If a guy can't handle that type of texting style from her, she will assume that he probably wouldn't be able to handle her in person or in the bedroom. Other women text based on their real mood at the time. So if she's feeling happy, she texts in a happy way. If she's feeling moody and down, she texts in that way. Other women like to text in a sensible and non-sexual way. A woman like that may prefer sensible and non-sexual because she's looking for a boyfriend or husband and doesn't want guys thinking that she's all about sex. She wants a guy who will trust her and invest in a committed relationship rather than just seeing her as a woman to be with for now. Now, in terms of the sensible and non-sexual women, it doesn't mean that a guy should text a woman like that in a sensible and non-sexual way at all times. She may want to look ladylike and make sure that a guy sees her as a trustworthy girl because she wants to find a boyfriend or a husband. But it doesn't mean that she wants the guy being overly polite, overly well-mannered, and so on. He can be a good guy when texting her, that is great, but he will still need to add in things that are going to create sparks of attraction inside of her. Additionally, with sensible women and ladylike women, they do like guys who can subtly flirt with them and subtly create sexual vibes in person and via text. They like guys who understand what's going on, where she wants to continue appearing ladylike, but she actually is a bit of a freak in the bedroom, so to speak, or she does like to get it on. She does enjoy sex. She wants to have sex. She wants to be in love. She wants to have a relationship. She doesn't want to just have a nice, platonic, friendly type of interaction with a guy, a friendly date, and then a friendly, neutral type of relationship where there is no spark. She still wants some sparks happening on the date. She wants sparks happening in the bedroom, and so on. When adapting your texting style, also understand that each woman may or may not care about grammar and punctuation via text. This often depends on a woman's age, but not always. Some professional, very intelligent women will text things like WTU doin' for what are you doing, or WYD for what are you doing, rather than so, what are you doing at the moment, regardless of their age. Other women will occasionally text things like, okay, see you later, but normally text using proper punctuation and grammar. In most cases, when a woman goes slang, so to speak, she's trying to show that she's being relaxed, chill, and not taking it too seriously. So she might say something like NP for no problem, later, with an 8, and so on. So what should you do? As a general rule, you should aim to be the more mature one in terms of grammar and punctuation, but be willing to use slang at times so she can see that you're not Mr. Serious who takes everything way too seriously no matter what the circumstance. If you lead with a more mature, sensible approach and occasionally add in some slang to vibe with her if applicable, she will appreciate it and feel attracted. The reality is that being too serious when in a relationship is boring for women. It's much more fun to be around someone who can relax and be silly at times, or at least pretend not to be serious about everything for a laugh. It doesn't mean that the guy isn't going to be professional, isn't going to talk to people in a straightforward manner, is going to talk and use lots of slang in everyday life or anything like that. It just means that at times the guy is willing to be a little bit more playful and not take things so seriously all the time. So when in a relationship, the woman can relax and be more of herself. She can feel free to express different parts of her personality rather than feeling like she has to be confined to a certain way of behaving, and anything outside of that is a no-no, right? It's looked down upon. She can't be a little bit more relaxed and easygoing and playful. So here's an example of using an abbreviation or some text slang rather than writing the full words. A guy's texting with a girl and he notices that she's using slang and abbreviated type of words. She says, sorry, missed your call, was at a friend's house. So to adapt to that, he's still going to be the more mature one, but he's going to add in a bit of slang. So he says NP for no problem. Just finished dinner, you free for a coffee tonight? Yeah, that sounds good. Cool, supper club at 9 p.m? Love that place at night. Okay, meet you there. So using the NP there is only a little adjustment to vibe with her. He doesn't need to write exactly like her, and he shouldn't. Writing NP like that doesn't make him look unintelligent or sloppy. It simply shows that he has the social intelligence to adapt to the situation and vibe with people on their level to make them feel good, to connect with them, rather than being a stiff, awkward type of guy who can only be one way. He can only be serious. Now, one thing I want to point out is that it's not entirely necessary to type NP, right, for no problem. You can still write no problem, but it's simply an example of adapting and vibing with a woman to illustrate this particular point. Now, it's great to use proper punctuation, grammar, full sentences, and so forth. In fact, when talking to guys about texting and asking about their experiences, what they're good at, what they need to improve, a lot of guys do pride themselves on writing correctly, right? Writing proper sentences using full stops, capital letters in appropriate places, and so on. It feels like a bit of an achievement to a guy, right? I'm writing correctly, and she may be a little bit sloppy at times or a bit messy, but I'm writing things correctly. That's great, and women do definitely appreciate it because it shows your maturity, but if there's no adaptation in terms of vibing with her on the level that she's at, there's no connection in that regard, then it becomes a little bit dry, a little bit stiff, a little bit boring, a little bit disconnected, and so on, right? So you want to be able to adapt at times, be a little bit more easygoing with it, and not take it all so seriously. When a guy takes things too seriously, in terms of text, for example, he's hoping that the other person is going to have a good opinion of him. Great punctuation. Oh, there's a full stop there. Yep, that's all correct. I give him an A+. Right? He's hoping to be seen as a guy who is structured and organized and does things correctly. That's all great, but if he's trying too hard in that regard and wants to be seen in a certain way by a woman to get a bit of a pat on the back or a, wow, you write really nicely, you must have done well in school sort of thing, then he isn't emotionally independent. He is needy for the woman's approval. In some cases, a guy may hope that if he texts in a very structured manner, in a correct manner, then the woman may see him as someone who is smart, successful, or will most likely be successful, someone that is better than her, that she needs to follow, and so forth. Yet the feeling that a woman is looking for is attraction. She wants to feel the excitement of attraction rather than having more logical type of thoughts where it's like, well, if he writes this well via text, then he will be very sensible. And therefore, I can commit to him and he will be a good provider and take care of me. I will be able to relax and he will be the leader in the relationship, right? It's not logical like that when it comes to romance. It's about the spark, which is why you need to focus on creating attraction when texting women and when interacting with them in person. When adapting your texting style, also understand that each woman will tend to either send short or long texts. While it's good to keep your texts short by not writing huge paragraphs all the time, you should adapt to the woman you are texting. For example, a woman tends to write longer texts, but the guy she's texting only ever replies with short texts. If that's her texting style, it's good to show some interest by occasionally writing longer texts as well. In another example, a woman only gives short replies to whatever the guy texts, but the guy continues to send 2 or 3 big paragraphs at a time and sometimes a bunch of large texts without any response from her. In cases like that, he should just slow down and not try to communicate everything via text. He should get to the point better, send a quick voice text if he wants to, or get to a phone call with her. A mistake that some guys make is thinking that the only way to text women is to text in a short way because that will make them seem less needy and so forth. Yet sometimes it is appropriate to send a bit of a longer text. If you don't want to type it all out, you can simply send a voice text. Of course, in most cases, you want to send shorter texts. You want to get to the point. You want to focus on attraction and get her to meet up with you. But there are times when it's necessary to send a bit of a longer text to show some interest in a woman who does text in that way. Likewise, if a woman is only sending short texts and a guy is offering too much, then he's most likely going about it in a way where he's trying to connect with her rather than attract her. So he needs to switch his focus to being more attractive and using what she's texting to say something that will get her to laugh and feel playfully challenged in the moment. So there is then a spark and she feels more inclined, more willing to reply and engage in the conversation. Finally, when adapting your texting style, understand that each woman will use emojis differently. So an example of this where a guy's not adapting and being socially intelligent is that a woman uses a lot of emojis in her texts. Yet the guy thinks it's feminine for a guy to use emojis, so he never uses them and comes across as dry, boring, or uninterested to her. In some cases, a guy can still attract a woman like that and get her out on a date, but she will be much happier and more comfortable about meeting him if she can connect with him based on the emojis he occasionally adds to messages. So, in terms of emojis and the social intelligence element here, it's about adapting to the situation rather than being too rigid and only being able to text in a certain way. The reality of emojis is that they can actually be used to subtly display confidence. It takes some confidence to send particular emojis that other guys wouldn't dare to or may think are a bit too showy or self-assured. A guy might worry and think that the woman will be turned off and say that he thinks too highly of himself. Alternatively, he worries that he might be showing too much interest by smiling in an emoji, so to speak. Yet it's much better to have the confidence to just do it. The woman can then see that you're confident in expressing yourself. Emojis can also help avoid misunderstandings. The woman immediately understands the kind of emotion you are conveying with your words, and therefore it helps to be more like a real conversation with emotional expression and facial expressions. Now, in terms of adapting your texting style when interacting with a woman who uses a lot of emojis, it doesn't mean that you then need to use a lot of emojis. You just need to occasionally add one in here and there to connect with her in the way that she likes to connect via text, and also express your emotion to ensure that she understands how you're coming across. It tends to cut down the amount of text that you actually have to send because the woman can sense that, okay, you're joking or you're in an upbeat mood and so forth, and then she doesn't have to put her guard up, play hard to get, ask you about it, and so on.